And let me tell you, for French people, it's a hard thing to do not to have a little glass of wine.
Most of my work doesn't fit the highlight machine, and so I understand that, and I'm okay with that. Now winning 4, maybe 5 player of the year is, it's a bigger miracle.
Yeah.
With Wembanyama and everyone talking, do you believe you can win a 5th Defensive Player of the Year award this year?
What has this season taught you about yourself?
It's a great question. I think for me, just learning to trust who I am.
Trust who you are.
Trust my superpower, and to don't put any limit on myself. And I realized that, there's always room to grow, especially on court, of course, but also as a leader.
Where do you think that you can still grow? Each time, because I was working with the French team, each time that I would see you, you would be better physically, better technically, better in your mind, and you're growing as a man. Where do you think, looking back and like what you're going through right now during the season, where you can continue to grow?
In many ways, obviously you mentioned the physical aspect. I'm 33, so for a lot of people, they see that as and it's a natural cycle of, of a career and in life in a way. But I feel like in even being 33, I still feel like I'm getting stronger and stronger. And I keep learning more about myself and my body. Of course, when you get a little older, you don't, say you don't recover as quick, and there's all these other factors. But you also, if you're willing to learn and be curious, you also learn how to work differently or to work more in certain areas.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's about mastering my body, mastering myself, and I think the mind.
The mind, yeah.
Is
Tell me
is
about
the
the
key.
mind a little bit.
I think everything starts from the mind and your mindset, and if you have the mindset that you want to be curious, you want to keep, you're willing to put the work in. And when I say put the work in, it's obviously skill, basketball, but also put the work in off the court, in what you put in your body, how you train your mind. All these things I think are all connected, and and I still feel like I have so much more to learn, and not just to learn, but to apply it.
Yeah.
Because knowing it is one thing.
That's the
applying
thing.
it,
That's so true.
That's
the most
it's a different
difficult
thing.
part,
It's the
I
most
think.
difficult part.
Oh, I know now what I gotta do now. Okay, do it. Work on it.
Being consistent.
Yes.
I think is a big one, and so it's for me it's I'm hungry, and coming from nothing, from small town in France, but I'm always in this quest of bettering myself in everything I do. And first as a man, and then obviously as a player. It's fun.
It's
fun,
it's a beautiful adventure.
It's an amazing journey, and you gotta be willing to be uncomfortable, I think, to challenge yourself and to be able to grow, and I think it's about also handling challenges, handling adversity, and then how you learn from that, and try to keep elevating yourself.
Yeah.
For myself, I think fatherhood has been probably it's been something that's motivating me to, even more to be the best example I can be for my kids.
Yeah,
And
it's a new motivation.
it is. So it's been amazing. It's been amazing to, be very busy with all these things in my life, but all these things happen because I want them.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and I'm ready to, to face all of these responsibilities, and then at the same time, learn and grow and enjoy every second of it.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely the process of growing, becoming a man, becoming who you really want to be, and that's a beautiful journey. Have you noticed if anything comes easier to you, or something is more difficult in the process of having a goal and working on that goal?
I think the most difficult part is the work. You know, it's the work, it's the consistency, it's overcoming challenges. You know, a lot of people have the same goals, but not everyone is willing to face the waves and face the storms and not just face them and embrace them, learn from them,
That's
grow
the
from
thing.
them.
Yeah, we talk a lot about that during our session. It's like, okay, this happened. Like, what did you learn from it, really? Because otherwise, you're not advancing.
And for me, that's that. I think, you know, from a very young age, I've learned to endure adversity and not let adversity make me turn around or turn away from my dreams, my goals, and who I want to be. So, you know, it's part of my journey, and I think it will always be part of who I am.
Yeah.
And that became my strength, you know. And I think all of the great things in life uh, are great because they don't come easy.
Yes.
And they are great because you have to overcome great adversity and great challenges to achieve them.
Yeah.
You know, and I've always been, you know, excited about those type of things.
Yeah. I love that. What is one thing that your body has been trying to tell you lately and you're finally listening to it?
It's a good one. I think I've been, over the course of my career, I've been, I won't say lucky, but I've been blessed to really experience things early, and like I understood very early the importance of taking care of my body. Everything that your body is trying to tell you, it tells it to you for a reason. And so I always try to work on the cause rather than just treat the symptom or treat the consequence.
Right. And that's really kind of like one of the layer of the work that I do with athletes is the somatic part of pain or stress or tightness. To me, there is like 3 layers: the biomechanical part, that looking at the posture, how you play, how you being used on the court, and like facilitate that for performance enhancement or recovery, or, you know, pain or tightness. But there is also this layer of somatic. What is your body is trying to tell you, interpreting that. And there is also like the third layer, the spiritual part. So it's kind of like the mind, body, spirit model. If you're able to work on all the 3 levels, then it's gold.
I think if one thing lately that I really learned is you know, the body and the mind, and like you said, the spiritual aspect of it. The energy around you matters, and that's as important as, you know, the physical part of it.
Because we share energy, whether it's with our neighbor, with your teammates, with,
and especially also every aspect of your life, you know, in every aspect of your life, and in your, obviously at home, and you know, in the areas when you spend the most time. So the way you sleep, obviously, the energy around you, all these things really matter, and they can either impact you in a good way or in a bad way.
Right. Your gang, the people that are around you all the time.
It is, and the body is like, I think the human body is so powerful and so strong and so resilient that we can endure a lot of things, but at some point the body will show it. You know, it will show it, and so yeah, that's a big thing. You know, mind, body, and spirituality. I think those 3 things are very connected.
Your body's your temple. So is there anything that your body has been telling you that you're now paying attention to?
I've been paying attention to this guy for many years, so you know, we learn. So I learn, you know, I learn about nutrition and some type of treatments. Like I learn new things every year. You know, and even when it comes to things that I do spiritually or to help me, you know, be the best version of myself every day. Like all these things, I think just very young, I realized that it was all connected. And it's the beauty of
That's
it.
the thing. Everything is connected. And I've said that before. All your bones, all your muscles, your brain, like everything is connected. And being able to pay attention to it will really help you come close to what's going on with your body and with your mind, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, the one thing that I've changed is I don't drink alcohol at all anymore.
And let me tell you, for French people, it's a hard thing to do not to have your glass of wine.
Yeah, so I don't have wine anymore, and it's more of a, like a spiritual thing, and also the brain and all these things. So I decided that, it was something that I needed to do. And I've never been a real drinker, right? But I really, now it's like zero, zero, and
respect that.
it's
Do you feel a difference in your body since you've been doing that?
I mean, I was never really drinking that much. I was drinking a glass of red wine here and there. During the season, it was only red wine. But I feel really clear in my mind. I feel like I recover really well.
Yeah, that's one thing that people report. Yeah.
And then, I mean, when you know what alcohol does to your body and to your mind, it's like, why would I put that in my body? Just to fit in, or just to, to not face reality for a second? No, I'd rather face reality and deal with it and process it.
You're somebody I really love talking holistic health with, because you've always been really curious. Like we'll always have some super interesting conversation, whether it's about nutrition, functional medicine, somatic pain. What I want to know is, when was the moment when you realized that taking care of your body was not going to be an option?
I had one moment, one period of time, really, when, when it comes to nutrition, in particular, I realized that, okay, this is important. And I remember, so I was in Cholet.
So you were not in the league?
That was before the league, so I was playing professional in France. So I became professional. I started practicing at the age of 18 with the pros, and then playing at 19. And so I was 20 years old, and obviously that was the year where I was getting ready to get drafted and realize my dream to make it to the NBA. And I really had to, I was very skinny. I really had to get stronger, and and I was spending so much. I still do, but I was spending. I realized very early that I had to really spend a lot of time in the weight room, and it kind of became like who I am. But more importantly, so my last season before getting drafted, early in the season, I had a couple of injuries, like sprained ankles and things like that. And so I remember, like, I sprained my ankle early in the season, so maybe in November, and then I sprained it again. Like, I came back from injury, and then I sprained it again, and then I was out for a few weeks. And I remember at this point, I was like, the club, so the GM from the team told me, if you need, we have this lady that could come cook to your place. You pay her a little bit, you pay her this amount, and then she come cook for you. And I was making, I'll give a number. I think I was making that Malaysia 5,000 a month, but I think I was paying this lady like 1,500 a month to be able to have a home cooked meal, and be able to hopefully get stronger and maximize my chance of making it to the NBA. And before that, I was cooking for myself. But, when you have 2 practice a day and you're tired, and, you go home, you just do pasta and chicken, or, you do something quick, or sometimes order pizza. And I had no idea at the time about nutrition, of what I thought, okay, I just need to eat a lot to get stronger, but I didn't value the quality of what I was eating. And so I hired this lady, she was an French-Italian lady that She was coming in my, lunch and dinner, and she was cooking some
That
home
sounds
cooked
good.
meal.
Like, please.
And
That's
and
awesome.
I didn't get injured until the end of the season, and I was able to get drafted, and I keep getting better and
That made
better
you
throughout the
think.
year. And so that's when I really realized, okay, this is an investment that I need to make. What I put in my body is super important. And after that, obviously, I remember getting, in Utah, getting drafted, and even as a rookie, I was like, okay, I need a chef.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hired someone that was delivering the meals, and then I kept, I stayed curious,
Yeah.
about, the quality of the, about now it's not just about what you eat, it's about where you source it from. So, and coming in America, when obviously the quality of the food is not as good, there's different entities that, the FDA is not the same as European regulations, and even the same companies sell you different type of food in America that they sell you in Europe. So anyway, all of these things, I wasn't aware at the time,
Yeah.
but I realized that I had to step it up, and every year, I kind of improved that until I think my fifth, when I signed my first big contract. So my fourth year, I hired a full-time chef. So I hired the lady that was coming and cooking, because I really wanted the food to be cooked in my home. And so she was getting everything organic, and she was cooking at home. And then obviously I felt a even bigger difference, and we saw it on the court. I was, thankfully, I wasn't missing a lot of games. I
Right.
was recovering better. I was playing. I mean, since I've been playing 30 to 35 minutes a game since probably my third season in the NBA. So,
You are what you eat.
mhm,
Mm-hmm.
and then, it's, and then you learn that it's actually not just physical. What you eat impacts your behavior, impacts your brain, which controls most of your actions,
That's so true.
and you have to see your body as a temple.
Mm-hmm.
And I think being an athlete really made me realize that quicker than the average person. But I think every person should really, your body is where you live. You gotta see it that way.
Yeah.
So why would you give your body things that's gonna make your body, your temple worst,
Yeah.
and make you have a worst experience
Yeah.
in that.
Sometimes
So
you don't know what you don't know. But
exactly.
that's also
But
why
when you
I'm
know,
asking you those questions, because this is an opportunity for everybody to learn.
and I think everyone is, we all are on our path of, on a journey of learning and try to live life and, navigate in life, try to do as good as we can. So knowledge is power, and the more you know, the more you can hopefully improve, and your body and your mind, and all the people that love you, all the people around you will thank you for that.
That's very true. And it's impressive that as a young kid, when you were a rookie, you were a kid, you were right, 18?
I got drafted, I was 20,
Oh, no, a little bit older.
21.
But you're still a baby at 21.
For sure.
Because I don't see a lot of rookie having that knowledge. It takes a few years. It takes like your second contract to be like, I have money now. Okay, I can take better care of my body.
So what I tell, I love that. I love that you say that, because almost every year when you have rookies, I'm like, so I talk to them and I say, so I think because a lot of them, they ask advice, like, what do you recommend? Like, I think the number one thing you should do is hire a chef.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of them, they're like, oh, I want to wait until my big contract.
Mhm.
And I say, okay, what are you driving? They say, oh, I got a Range Rover, I got a Porsche, so you're telling me that what you drive is more important than what you're going to put in your body,
That's smart.
and so
Yeah, that's
and
a
so I'm
good
like, look,
way.
you when you get a chef, you invest on yourself. You give your chance a higher chance of then signing a bigger contract, and then all the work you put in the gym and all these hours, and all the things that you do to be the best you can be on the court. What you put in your body will help you maximize that.
Exactly.
And so it's something that they don't teach us early. Now I think now there's more awareness. I think now the NBA teams from when I got drafted to now, every NBA team now has a chef and has
Yeah, a
they have a cook and a
nutritionist.
facility. When I got drafted in Utah, it was I mean it was prison food. I mean
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
seriously prison food, and then obviously we got to
You
improve
got
it
better.
year after year. But the first year it was like you pay you invest millions and millions on players and you feed them crap.
That's so true.
So it's like you buy your Lamborghini and you put the
GD
worst
tires.
you put the worst gas in it.
Yeah.
And so, but there was just it wasn't by design. It was just people were not aware of
Yeah.
how important it is.
Yeah.
I think we are all on a path of learning, and for me it's something that I try to talk to every player about, and then and
Yeah,
it's fun. It's
that's part
fun,
of
and
being a
they're not,
leader.
and that when a vet or someone older or with more knowledge would tell you something, you're not gonna they're not gonna overnight change, but they will apply it things step by step, and it will, sometimes it takes a year, sometimes it takes 5
Yeah.
years.
You're planting a seed.
You plant the seed, and
Yeah.
then you just it's just about how dedicated are you to be great at what you do and to put all the chip on your side. I was someone that, I was never the most talented. I was never the most gifted. I just had to, very early on, I realized that those details matter to
Yeah.
me. And they kind of stick with me in everything I do.
What I've seen so far after all those years is that a lot of elite athletes, and I work mostly with NBA players, you guys build a performance team around you outside of what the franchise can offer. For example, you work with me as a performance therapist, but you also do strength therapy, you do nutrition, we talked about it. You have access and you build a team of very knowledgeable people. Why was that important for you to create your own ecosystem?
I think I kind of did it progressively. Obviously the strength training, something was always very important to me. Then the nutrition part was very important, and then very early on, obviously the treatment part. So when it comes to massage, when it comes to recovery, all of these things, and then over the years, as I've kept learning about my body, about myself, I met some really, really knowledgeable people and people that are really good in what they do in their specific areas. I kind of build this team.
Why does that work for you to build that team instead of just using what the team have available?
So I use what the team has available, but I think obviously the team staff has to care for a whole team. So for me, I think I always felt like I needed more than that, and sometimes different expertise that the team staff doesn't have. It kind of like complements what the team does. Um, and then same for the nutrition part. At first I just had a private chef. Now I also work with a naturopath. So her and my chef, they
They
work
collaborate.
together. They collaborate. So she's based in France, but she sends she sends us all of the best, nutrients or some of the best supplements, because obviously it's just like food. The quality of the supplements is very important. And we have a plan, about nutrition, about the way you cook, and I still enjoy every meal, but at least it's sometimes it's just the oil that you use that can create more or less inflammation and all of these things. So that, and then the soft tissue work and all of these things, I think I
It's
added
very
it.
personalized,
It's
really,
very
what you're
personalized,
doing.
and the strength. So now I mostly during the season work with the team's strength coaching staff, but I also have so I have a strength coach in France and a strength coach in America. So the one in America, Michael Casey, I've been working with him since 2018. Early on, it was only during summertime. And now during the season, when we have different stretches, when I'm home a lot, we will bring him in and just get a few sessions in. And it's kind of like everyone is communicating.
Yes,
So
that's
the
important.
Timberwolves staff and him and my strength coach in Paris, all communicating, and we share the same vision.
Yes.
And so it's something that I realize is very important, to
Yeah.
all go in the same directions.
And I can attest to that because I'm also communicating
communicating
really
with
well,
Mhm.
with the team. Not every team is like that, but you guys are very open about what other professional can bring, because at the end of the day, we all win. It's about the team, it's about the player,
Yeah.
and about,
There's no
this
ego.
goal.
There's no
Exactly.
ego, and I think it's true in this field. A lot of time, you have people that might be worried to lose the athlete, or that might be a little overprotective.
Yeah, it never happens
Mhm.
in my experience, and that's why I love working with your staff and with Erin. Thank you, Erin. No, we communicate really well, and that really helps. Like
Erin is great. Erin,
yeah,
if you're watching this, we
you're
appreciate it.
amazing. No, and I love that she communicates with me what she sees, what the PT sees, and then the same I communicate with her, and like it just helps to stay on the same path, so that you're not overwork or underwork. This is how you win.
And as you said, if the athlete is performing well, if he's healthy, everybody wins.
Yeah.
It's a teamwork.
It's a teamwork. It's a team sport. It's a teamwork. So, if you shine, I shine. Like I've always seen it that way. When I'm working on your hips right now in a different position, we have behind us a hyperbaric chamber. And I know that because you're curious, you have been trying different type of tools. I've seen a hyperbaric chamber that you brought to the French team at some point. How did you hear about hyperbaric chamber, oxygen, and like how do you use it?
So the first time I heard about it was from Kyle Korver, which was my teammate in Utah at some point. I think he was probably in 2019, 2018, 2019. Someone would verify that. And so Kai was telling me about it, and he said, "Man, you should get a hyperbaric chamber." He said, like, it just helps me recover so much better, recover and recover in general, but also even recover from injuries. And so I was like, really, put me in touch with the people, and why not? So I started to dig into it, and I ordered one for my Utah house. And so it was a model. This is a hard model, so this is like a medical grade one.
Yeah, and it has more oxygen, right?
Yeah,
and
so the pressure.
more pressure.
And so I ordered one, and it was the one I found out that Cristiano Ronaldo was using it, that Tom Brady, I think, was using it. Like a lot of very successful, obviously, athletes were using that. And so, I got one, and I remember that it did, like, when I wasn't doing it that much at the beginning, but when I did it, I realized that every little injury that I had, or every little soreness, was like going away like super fast.
Yeah.
And so what it does is just oxygenates your cells.
And what I
much
read is
more,
that
so it's
it
pressure.
pushes the oxygen to
Yes.
your plasma instead of just in the red blood cell when we just breathe air
Thanks to the
naturally.
pressure. So what it does is that you can increase the pressure, and you get the extra oxygen. And so for the brain, for the cells, for everything, it's incredible, because
Yeah.
it gets more oxygen in the area that needs it. And so
It helps repair the cells.
repair the cell, repair the tissues that are always inflamed, that
Yeah.
we go hard on the cold every day, and our brain,
Yes.
inflammation, all of these things, like, it just oxygenates the whole body. And so since then, I started to use it more and more, and so I bought one when I got traded in Minnesota. I bought one here too. So I still have the one in Utah, and I have one here too, from the same brand. And now finally, so a little more than a month ago, I was working with a really good brain specialist that told me that I should get one that can go in higher pressure, um, to be able to have even more benefits for the brain and for recovery. And so I said, okay, so let me look at different companies, and then I found this company that had a model that I could fit in, that I could lay down and be comfortable, and also that is
That was big enough.
big
Also.
enough,
Yeah.
wide, and obviously the safety and the quality is
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's an investment, it's exactly what we talked about when it's about investing on yourself
Yeah.
as an athlete. And so I bought this little guy that it's been great.
Yeah.
And it's a medical grade one. It's a hard shell, so it's really like some of the clinics. Usually, like, it's not a lot of people that buy those for their homes. It's more like clinics, but my home is kind of like my clinic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
If
bought
you
it,
could see his house, it's crazy.
and it's been great,
Yeah.
and it's also great for, I like when I have family members or people that I'm like, okay, like, do this.
Hop in it. Yeah. And
This is
because this one
incredible for
also
you.
has several pressures, so you can start low. It's not just one pressure. And if you were a beginner, you can start low, and then you progress little by little.
Really
How do you feel after a session, or does it take several sessions to start feeling the benefits?
No, I think when you nap in there and you get out, then you get out of it, you're a little, it's like you're landing from the moon, you're like, not like I've been on the moon before, but like, it's like you have to wake up, and you can tell that, you're a little foggy.
Yeah.
But then once you wake up, then you feel great, and the body, like, I can literally feel like my body is recovering faster, and when you have injuries or little traumas and
Yeah.
even bruises or things like that, it just makes you heal faster. I don't see, it helps your body absorb nutrients better too. So if you
Yes,
take,
that's
like,
true. I read that.
I usually take vitamin C, and sometimes some other supplements, like, right before going in there, and it get absorbed by your cells better.
Yes.
So really, I think every athlete that puts their body and their mind through the fire every day, I think it's an amazing investment.
Yes, I agree.
Even if you don't get this one, I really recommend it
Yeah.
to all the athletes.
So that's like one big tool that you use that's very obvious. I wanted to talk about it because it's right there in the room. So I was kind of like curious about it and how you use it. Would you share like a few other tools that you use to kind of help your performance, your sleep?
Yeah. So one thing that I use, especially in the winter, being in Minnesota, is light therapy. So red light and infrared therapy. I think I think physiologically, I'm not supposed to not be in the sun,
Yeah.
and so
And your
this
genetic is
kind
also
of,
black,
yeah,
so you probably need to be a
exactly.
little bit more.
So I can feel that my body and my mind is not the same in the winter
Yeah.
than it is in when I get to see the sun every day.
Yeah.
And so light therapy is kind of a way to hack that, and since I've been doing that, I can tell I've been doing better in the winter
Okay.
than I used to do some of the previous years. And so there's obviously a lot of
There's a lot of
different
stuff.
tools
You
you can
started
use, but
PMF.
yeah,
Yeah.
grounding is a big one.
Oh, yes. And it's a free one.
Yeah, it's a free one. I mean, the
Free one
earth,
too.
being able to put our feet in the grass. I know it sounds hippie, sounds crazy, but we are electric beings.
Yes.
So, you know, going barefoot in the grass, actually, like, and the same is a lot of studies about this. It's not just
That's true.
because
there is not grounding mats. If you cannot put your feet on
exactly.
the
So
grass.
when it's snowing
Yeah.
outside, sometimes if I'm on a good day, I'd go and put my feet in the snow. But sometimes I don't want to put my feet in the snow, and then you have grounding mats So what it does is that it really helps your body remove inflammation.
Yeah.
And when most of the disease and most of the problems that we have come from inflammation, and those things help. It's kind of like, I call it biohacking.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
when you're not
It's
able to do it
extra,
naturally.
extra option that once you add
Mhm.
them up,
Mhm.
you get really like a good recipe for success.
I can feel, when because we travel so much, being on a plane. I mean, we have to get on planes to go from a city to another to be able to do what we do, right? But it puts your body under a lot of stress, and and there's a lot of electromagnetic uh, fields and a lot of things that kind of like create more stress on your
Right.
body.
It's true.
So when you go back, when you're able to go outside and just put your feet in the grass for a little bit, you kind of like your body reconnects to the ground, and you lose. It helps like calm your nervous system and actually remove a lot of this inflammation. So
Yeah. No,
just things
it's
that
so
I've
true.
learned, over the
Yeah.
course of my career, and
Yeah.
the human body is so fascinating.
It's so fascinating, and at the same time, what I've learned over the years, it's not as complicated as
It's
sometimes
not.
we want to
We've
make it
been,
look like.
unfortunately, we haven't. They don't teach us that, because I mean, which industry benefits for
From
us
just putting your
being
feet
healthier and being
on
putting
the
our feet in the
grass.
grass?
Yeah.
I mean, you're never gonna see a commercial about that,
Yeah.
right? So we have to find that out
Because it's true.
ourselves, you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
and it's amazing. It's amazing how to me, the connection with nature has been. I've been getting more and more connected to it, and I've been feeling better and better.
Thank you for sharing, because you're not somebody who gatekeep. Like, I've seen him sharing some of his tools with his teammate, giving them for Christmas, and like we said, it's a team sport. So if you share your knowledge, we all win. And so
Yeah, I mean, we're
thank you
all
for that.
together,
Yes.
like if anything can help me, I want everyone to be able to benefit from it,
Yeah, that's a great
and especially
mentality.
I mean, those things are free. It's
Yes,
just knowledge.
it's so true.
So it's cool. It's cool to learn about these things, and then everyone can,
Experiment.
experiment in and see how they feel,
Yeah.
and some things work more for people than others.
Yeah.
But I think for the grounding part, I think it's um, just for the mind.
Yeah.
You don't even think about the body,
Yeah.
but just for the mind. You put your feet in the grass, and
In Japan, they hug trees, for example.
in Japan,
Yeah.
the doctors a lot of times I've read that. I don't know if it's true, but the doctor prescribe a walk in the forest. And
Yeah. So you're 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, and sometimes you get overlooked for the work that you do and the role that you have on the floor. How do you learn to muffle the noise and keep working and keep showing up every night?
I think more than anything, I just want to win. So very early, I understood that we what we do is a sport, but it's also a show. And a lot of times, you're gonna have different opinions. You're gonna have uh, characters that are being built, or sometimes good guys, sometimes villains. And that's part of what I do. And so,
Yeah. I like that perspective. It's so true.
and as someone that I think is really, when I step on the court, trying to do anything I can to help my team win. And a lot of these things being maybe not always the most pretty things and the most, I would say, yeah, I would say maybe not always the most entertaining things. Um, I understand why, it can be sometimes perceived as, I would say, boring, or it can be underappreciated.
Yeah.
I mean, even myself watching the game, I'd rather see some big dunks and then big shots, and people getting crossed over than seeing someone that sets great screens and then get is very consistent and get rebounds and of course get blocks and stuff like that. But most of my work is doesn't fit in the doesn't fit the highlight machine, and so I understand that, and I'm okay with that. Once again, for me, it's about winning. It's about what do I do every second on the court to impact my team in a positive way. Coming from where I come from, winning, just being in the NBA is a miracle.
Yes, it's so
So
true.
now winning 4, maybe 5 defensive player of the year is, it's
It's
a
amazing.
bigger miracle.
Yeah, yeah.
It's amazing.
And I think it's important to touch on it because, spoiler alert, I am not a specialist in basketball and stats or highlights. Like I know really well you guys' body. I know, how to help you stay healthy, but I don't know about the technicity about basketball. Can you help me and kind of like give me your definition of defense?
I mean, defense is, as I would say, pretty simple. It gets complicated when you dig deep, but pretty simple. I think basketball is
For
an
somebody
amazing
like me.
sport. There's two ends of the court, offense and defense. And when you have the ball, you try to score, and when the other team has the ball, you try to stop them from scoring. And so it's also a team sport. So it's I think myself, when I look at defense, I don't look at it as just an individual matchup. I look at, okay, how can I limit this team? How can I first of all help my teammates? So as a group, we can make sure that this team score the least point possible. And so it's what it's about. And then it's obviously you gain technicity of the game, and you where the goal is really to make guys more comfortable, make their percentage drop, make them create some intimidation, so they understand that if they're not gonna have of course people are gonna score, because there's no game of basketball that ends with any teams scoring 0 points, but lowering their percentages and making sure they have a more uncomfortable nights than usual.
What made you be one of the best defender in the league? If you think about your childhood, maybe, who taught you this type of responsibility?
That's a great question. I think one of the characters that I think transfer from life to the court, and when it comes to defense, I think one of the big ones is resilience. And I think I mean, growing up with my mom, growing up in north of France in the projects, very very early I saw my mom trying to work really hard and to try to put food on the table, and I think naturally I kind of built that resilience in me. And no matter what I did, even before I started basketball, I had this. I'm very stubborn, and then sometimes it's not great, but when it comes to sports and when it comes to competition, it's always been a strength. I remember like I could lose as a kid, like even now, I can lose. I can play ping pong and lose 5 games in a row, and I'm not gonna stop until I win. And I think when I started basketball and I became passionate about it, it kind of became part of me. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to win on the court, even if it's not cute. And whatever it takes to help my teammates, whatever it takes, to win. And defense is a big part of that. You know,
Yeah.
uh, this is a talent itself. The ability to be resilient, to never stop. And also to be fearless, because especially in today's day and age. Like, no one, people don't always want to end up on highlight, or they don't want to, they rather spend their energy, um, you know, scoring or doing things that might be more fun, but it's, yeah, it kind of became who I am, and I enjoy scoring, I enjoy doing all these things, but I enjoy winning more than any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so
you're willing to do what it takes.
yeah, it kind of became part of my identity. It's not like I woke up one day and I was like, I just want to play defense. No, I love playing offense and I love playing defense. But I love winning and doing whatever it takes. And obviously, I realized that uh, I wanted to be the best defensive player on the planet, and I had the ability to be that. And so kind of became part of my identity.
So we don't realize as parents or as a mentor how much like kids are looking at what we do, and they're kind of internalizing it, and that later on becomes a part of who they are. And that's
Sure.
something that I kind of like see with you.
For sure, and now being a father, that's why when I say that I strive to be the best version of myself I can be, everything I do and the way I react in the world, the way I react to good things, the way I react to bad things, my habits, the way I eat, the way I work out, the way I speak to people. And so it kind of like, yeah, it pushes me to show them the best example I can be, and perfection doesn't exist, and I'm far from perfect, but I try to improve myself every day to give them the best foundation they can have, and hopefully when they get older and they have adversity, they have the ability to overcome any type of adversity and doing it gracefully.
Yeah. Have you ever internalized criticism, for example, whether it's like in sport or like in your regular life?
For sure. I mean, I'm an introvert, so I think I internalize a lot of things, um, especially growing up and early in my career. Now it's kind of like, I would say I'm getting a little wiser,
You understand yourself
and I
better.
understand that everyone's gonna have their opinions based on their own experiences and based on what they see and what they learn and what they hear about me. And so I don't care as much, I care more about being the best I can be. And then it's kind of like, I realize that I am my own competition
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day. No matter what, it's about the journey and the things I do. I realize more and more that it's about the thing I do for others, and then hopefully I can inspire anyone in the world, no matter what they do, into thinking that they can, understanding that they can accomplish anything if they put their mind to it. And if I do that, I'll be very happy.
Yeah. When you think about little Rudy, the little Rudy in Saint-Quentin, has he ever doubted his power or his worth?
Mm, I think probably had small doubts, but I don't think he ever doubted his worth or his power. I think maybe when everybody else did, I think he always had that inner fire, that inner belief to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And
How did he learn that? Do you know? Was it just like in him from the beginning?
I don't know. I think probably a mix of both. Maybe he learned it from observing. But I think definitely like there's some of these things that, deep inside me, and I think we're always there, you know.
Do you think that what do you think that he needed at that time from a leader figure, a coach, to actually be able to 100% trust his abilities and power?
I think feeling that people believe in me, maybe.
Becoming a mother changed me, kind of like restructure my identity. How do you live your new role as a father?
I mean, it's incredible for me, and I think the main thing, I think I would say, just pushed me to be better. You know, I know that being a father is the best thing that happened. Becoming a father is the best thing that happened in my life. It's my biggest blessings, but it's also a big responsibility. And you know, for having these two little souls, these two little humans that, you know, watch me every day from close and later from a distance. You know, for me, leading by example is really important, and I want to really, in everything I do, uh, being the best version of myself, and hopefully show them by my actions every day and the things I do with them and even without them in the world. In everything I do, you know, show them the best values that I can show them. And for me, the values of integrity, respect, values of hard work, you know, generosity, and making the world a better place.
Yeah.
I think, you know, being able for them to see me do the things I do in my charity, and, you know, hopefully I want to bring them also as they get older, like bring them and do things for people all over the world, for kids all over the world, being able for them to see the less fortunate, like really give them that perspective, and
Yeah.
hopefully I want them to care about, you know, people when they get older. And
What did you do with your foundation?
the Rich Kids Foundation created it 8 years ago, and then it's really focused on. So it's really about, you know, empowering, helping kids all over the world. So we do all kind of different operations. We partner with local charities in France, in America, even in Africa. Really, you know, the goal is so we try to find charities that we think do a good job, you know, that the money really goes where it's supposed to go, to the kids. And we empower them. For me, the most important is for any kid anywhere around the world to think that they can do anything, you know, to be able to have the opportunity, but more importantly, to have the belief that they can be whoever they want to be in this world.